Sardar Patel Medical College, Bikaner. So I am here with a video on hydrocephalus. Uh, I'm I have tried to make the thing simple so that you can understand it very well. So by definition, if you look, hydrocephalus means collection of fluid in the brain. That is the literal meaning. So whenever there is increased amount of fluid in ventricles and there is subsequent dilatation that leads to clinical features of increased intracranial tension, then we label it as hydrocephalus. Now, it is very important to differentiate between the two terms, that is hydrocephalus and ventriculomegaly. Ventriculomegaly literally means that there is increase in the size of ventricles. Okay, so it may be associated with the signs of raised intracranial tension, but sometimes it is only the dilatation of ventricles, but there is no sign of increased intracranial tension. In that condition, we label it as ventriculomegaly, but ventriculomegaly is there in hydrocephalus, but that is always associated with signs of increased intracranial tension. So before proceeding to hydrocephalus, the main chapter, we should always know the normal pathway of the CSF and from where it is generated and where does it flow and where does it ultimately go. So here in this diagram, you can very well see that in the lateral ventricles, in the third ventricle and in the fourth ventricle, there are choroid plexuses. These choroid plexuses secrete the CSF. So the major amount is secreted in the lateral ventricles. Then through the interventricular foramina, it comes into the third ventricle. From the third ventricle, through the aqueduct of Sylvius, which is a very narrow pathway, it comes in the fourth ventricle, and from the fourth ventricle, it exits from it through the median foramen of Magendie and lateral foramina of Luschka, and then it comes in the subarachnoid space and it actually surrounds the whole of the brain because it is acting as shock absorber for the brain, and from here it is absorbed or reabsorbed through arachnoid granulations and then it is drained into the sinuses of the brain. So this is the normal pathway. So what happens in hydrocephalus? Either there is increased production of the CSF, that is choroid plexuses are secreting more and more of the CSF, or there is obstruction anywhere in this pathway, means from ventricles to the granulations. If there is any obstruction in the pathway of CSF, then both these conditions, that is increased production or problem in the drainage, leads to features of hydrocephalus. Okay. So what is the pathology? So there is dilatation of ventricles, disruption of ependymal lining is there, then that leads to periventricular ooze. There is compression of periventricular white matter and cortex is involved in late stages. And this all leads to the clinical features which are there in patients with or children with hydrocephalus. So what is the etiology? In this reference, I would like to tell you about two terms, that is communicating hydrocephalus and non-communicating hydrocephalus or obstructive hydrocephalus. So please keep in mind that communicating and non-communicating is related to whether there is obstruction at the level of ventricles or not. If it is a communicating type of hydrocephalus, that means the pathway through the ventricles is normal. All the ventricular cavities are communicating as they should be. But in non-communicating or obstructive hydrocephalus, the block lies somewhere at the ventricular system. Either it may be at the aqueduct of Sylvius or it can be in either of the ventricles. Okay, and so problem in communicating hydrocephalus is lying outside the ventricular system, while it is in the ventricular system in non-communicating or obstructive hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus may be a congenital or acquired one. So if we look at the causes of congenital hydrocephalus, intrauterine infections are very common causes of hydrocephalus, which may be cytomegalovirus infection, rubella infection or toxoplasma. Some of the congenital malformations like aqueductal stenosis, Dandy-Walker malformation, Arnaud Chiari malformation, Venn of Galen malformation, they are also responsible for causing hydrocephalus in a newborn baby. So what are these malformations? I will be telling you in later slides. Then acquired hydrocephalus means the disease is acquired after birth, and that leads to hydrocephalus. Tuberculosis is one common cause in our country which commonly leads to communicating type of hydrocephalus. Then chronic and acute pyogenic meningitis may be a cause. It may be a sequelae of intraventricular hemorrhage. That hydrocephalus may be there because of posterior fossa tumors, because uh, posterior fossa tumors will obstruct the pathway of the CSF. Okay, so that will lead to hydrocephalus. Then arteriovenous malformation may be there. Choroid plexus papilloma causes increased secretion of the CSF, so that is also a cause of hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus ex vacuo is a condition which I am going to tell you in the later slides, in which uh, actually it is a misnomer. There is no increase in intracranial tension, but ventricles are dilated. Now this slide shows you the hydrocephalus ex vacuo. That means dilatation of ventricles is there, but that is because of atrophy of the uh, parenchyma of the brain. So the pressure is not increased in this condition. Okay, so this CT is very well showing the hydrocephalus ex vacuo. This CT is also showing the same. Uh, there is atrophy of the brain parenchyma. You can compare the both. This is normal where you can see the gyri and sulci, and here in atrophy the gyri and sulci becomes more prominent, and it has a pulling effect on the ventricle, and that leads to dilatation of the ventricles. Okay. Then what are the various clinical features of hydrocephalus? If a child is infant one in whom the sutures are not yet closed, anterior fontanelle is also open, so that leads to an enlarging head size. There is delayed closure of fontanelle and sutures because the increasing pressure doesn't allow the sutures and fontanelle to close. There is headache, vomiting and behavior disturbances in smaller children as well as older children. On fundus examination, you may find a papilledema, that is blurred margins of optic disc, cranial nerve palsies in the form of lateral gaze palsy, that is paralysis of sixth nerve, and other nerves may also be involved. Upper motor neuron signs in the form of positive Babinski sign, increased or brisk deep tendon reflexes may be there, prominent skull veins are there, setting sun sign may be there, in which because of enlarging head size and pressure on the orbital plate, the upper sclera becomes more visible, and that leads to a picture like setting of a sun. Then distortion of the brainstem in later stages may cause bradycardia, hypertension and irregular breathing, and child may die of the condition. And this triad, that is bradycardia, hypertension and irregular breathing, is known as Cushing's triad. Then how do we diagnose the condition? Okay, so early diagnosis is possible only with accurate serial monitoring of the head circumference. And in that reference, you should keep in mind 1, 2 and 3. What is that 1, 2 and 3? If rate of increase of size of head is more than 1 centimeter over a period of 2 weeks in first 3 months of life, then it is definitely abnormal. Then serial cranial ultrasound examination can also help us. Then coronal and sagittal suture separation up to 0.5 centimeter in first fortnight is normal, but if it is the sutures are sutural separation is more than this, or it is there after first fortnight, then it is also abnormal. So which are the coronal and sagittal sutures? Sagittal sutures are between these two parietal bones. Here lies the sagittal suture, and this is the coronal suture that lies between the frontal bone and parietal bone. Then the other is persistent widening of squamoparietal suture, that is the suture lying between the parietal bone and squamous bone. So this is squamoparietal suture. If persistent widening of this suture is there, then also it indicates that yes, this child may have hydrocephalus, and we should have an alert in our mind that please do monitor this child. Then X-ray of the skull gives a silver beaten appearance and ballooning of sella turcica because of effects of raised intracranial tension for a long time. Okay, then CT head may give you an idea. In obstructive hydrocephalus, there is enlargement of lateral as well as third ventricle. Okay, but in communicating hydrocephalus, all the four ventricles are dilated. Okay, so this is how you differentiate between the communicating and non-communicating hydrocephalus. They can be easily differentiated with the help of a CT head. Then Evans ratio is one which tells us that yes, there may be hydrocephalus, which I am going to tell you in the later slides. Then MRI of the brain may tell us site of obstruction and malformations. And say if a mother is having a child or mother had a child who suffered from hydrocephalus in first pregnancy, then there are chances that there are some pathologies which may be there in the next pregnancies too. So in that condition, we should monitor the fetal brain also, and for that procedure of choice is ultrasound of the fetal brain. Then here in this diagram you can see the beaten silver appearance that occurs because of chronically increased intracranial tension. Okay, so these convolutional markings you can see very well all over the skull. Then coming to the Evans ratio. So what is that? In a CT head, uh, A upon B, that A is interventricular diameter. The frontal horns of the lateral ventricle, we take the diameter here, and at the same level we take the internal diameter of the skull also. So if this ratio, that is A upon B, is more than 30%, that it indicates ventricular dilatation. Okay, so it is actually ventricles to biparietal cortex ratio. Okay. Then what are the various differential diagnoses? Actually, these are differential diagnosis of a large head. Okay, so a large head may be because of hydrocephalus, but there are also other conditions which may cause uh, a large head. Okay, so in that you have to differentiate. Megalencephaly is a condition in which there is increased size of brain tissue because of deposition of some metabolites, like as occurs in cases of Tay-Sachs disease, in mucopolysaccharidosis and all that. Okay, so there is no collection of fluid, there is no problem with the ventricles, but actually the brain size is increased because of deposition. Then chronic subdural hematoma is also a differential diagnosis. Then rickets may be a cause of large head, but in that condition you have in every case you have to take a detailed history and you have to go for physical examination to see for other signs or symptoms, features of rickets. Then familial macrocephaly may be there. In that condition, the intelligence of the child will be normal, there will be no signs of raised intracranial tension, and in this condition measurement of size of head of parents is very important. Okay, achondroplasia, another cause. In this you will find clinical features of achondroplasia. Then hemolytic anemia causes parietal bossing and frontal bossing, so you have to correlate with the clinical findings, and then you can differentiate very well between the hydrocephalus and these other conditions. And what is the treatment? Now first we should try hard to find out the etiology of the hydrocephalus. If there is a spontaneous arrest, then no surgery is required, but if the head is enlarging in size rapidly and it may endanger the life, then surgery is required. Okay. Now medical management we can go for by the time we are waiting for the surgery, as in the form of acetazolamide or furosemide, but this is helpful only for a short period of time. Ultimately you have to actually depress the brain. Okay, then surgical management is there in the form of lumbar drainage. The most commonly used procedure for hydrocephalus is ventriculoperitoneal shunt, and various types of shunt are available, that is Chabra shunt, Upadhyay shunt, flow regulated shunt. Okay, so ventriculoperitoneal shunt, actually the ventricular cavity of the brain is communicated to the peritoneal cavity, so that extra fluid that is being collecting in the brain or ventricles is drained into the peritoneal cavity, which can accommodate that much amount of fluid. Okay, ventriculoatrial shunt. Then endoscopic third ventriculostomy is another mode which is also commonly used, that in which we open up the third ventricle so that it decompresses the brain. Then coming to two of the malformations, that is Arnold-Chiari malformation and Dandy-Walker malformation. Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1 is not associated with hydrocephalus, it presents late. In young adults, actually, it presents in the form of neck pain and all that. Type 2 is a cause of progressive hydrocephalus and it is associated with the meningomyelocele. Actually, it is an anomaly of hindbrain, and because of in the embryonic life there is failure of pontine flexure development that leads to all the clinical features of Arnold-Chiari malformation. So that results in elongation of fourth ventricle and kinking of brainstem, and there is displacement of inferior vermis, pons and medulla into the cervical canal. So this picture is showing you the Arnold-Chiari type 2 malformation. That is, this is the normal brain in which cerebellum is in its place. The brainstem, pons and all those structures are in place. But here in Arnold-Chiari malformation type 2, the cerebellar vermis, brainstem, that pons, they are actually displaced downward in the cervical canal. Okay, so this MRI film is also showing the same, and this is the dilated ventricles. Okay, so this is Arnold-Chiari type 2 malformation. Then is the Dandy-Walker malformation. It is because of failure of roof of fourth ventricle to develop. So there is cystic expansion of the fourth ventricle in posterior fossa, and there is midline cerebellar hypoplasia. So this is the cystic expansion of the fourth ventricle, and this increased pressure in posterior cranial fossa causes obstruction to the flow that leads to dilatation of the ventricles. So this is Dandy-Walker malformation. A word about difference between the Chiari type 1 and 2 anomalies in these terms. Okay, caudal dislocation of medulla is unusual in type 1 malformation, but it is there in type 2 Chiari malformation. Caudal dislocation into the cervical canal occurs of tonsil, and here it is a larger portion of the brain, that is inferior vermis, medulla and fourth ventricle. Okay, then spina bifida may be present, but it is very commonly present in type 2 Chiari malformation. Hydrocephalus may be absent, but it is rarely absent in type 2, means it is present in most of the cases. Then medullary kink is also common in type 2 Chiari malformation. Course of upper cervical nerve is altered in type 2 malformation. Age of presentation is later in type 1 malformation, while it is in infancy the child presents very soon in type 2 Chiari malformation. Usually the type 1 patient present with cervical pain and type 2 patient present with progressive hydrocephalus respiratory distress. So